That she had been abandoned, fine. I don't care.
She was abandoned. We were all abandoned.
Mm-hmm. And out of respect for both of them, I'm just gonna, so.
Hey crew, welcome back to my channel. The only place where you get the truth the network never wanted you to see. Take a good look at this number, $12 million. It is not money, it is betrayal. It is secrecy. And it is the number that finally outed Robyn Brown as the ultimate mastermind of the family fortune. For years, Christine thought she was standing next to a sister wife. What she didn't realize, behind her back, Robyn had been keeping a $12 million nest egg created on lies, hidden contracts, and a plan that is now falling apart in court. This is not about an account in the bank. This is about greed, manipulation, and power. And when Christine finally found the paper trail, the whole Brown family's reality shattered wide open. Today, crew, I am taking you behind the courtroom, behind the secret documents, and behind the testimony that confirms Robyn's empire was not about love. It was about money. But before I lift the curtain, you know the routine. If you think Christine is entitled to justice and truth, smash that like button and subscribe. Let's tell the algorithm that we are the real crew, and that we're not falling for the TLC fantasy anymore. To understand how Robyn pulled this off, we have to rewind. Think back to the early seasons of Sister Wives. The cameras showed us a struggling family, pooling resources, talking about unity and sacrifice. But behind closed doors, Robyn was drafting exclusive contracts, shifting funds into her own accounts, and taking on the role of Kody's business partner. While Christine, Janelle, and Mary thought that every dollar was for the family, this was not merely favoritism. This was an orchestrated scheme. The first rumors began during the Kody Pass debacle. Fans witnessed tears, confusion, and endless procrastination. But buried among those delays was a secret. Robyn and Kody were pouring money into a shell company associated with properties Christine never got to see. Christine would testify that she had no idea that those documents even existed. And when her attorneys subpoenaed the records, they discovered a mind-boggling $12 million stash Robyn had been quietly accumulating with family funds, show revenue, and yes, even the children's profits staff. Consider the treachery. Christine worked years preparing meals, raising children, growing the brand, to learn that the woman smiling across the dinner plate had already negotiated her golden parachute. The courtroom was charged. The attorney sat forward. "Mrs. Brown, can you tell us the nature of this account?" Robyn floundered. "It was savings, for emergencies." The attorney's eyebrow shot up. $12 million. That is some emergency fund. Christine murmured to her lawyer, her voice biting with incredulity. "I never saw a dime of that." The court gasped. Robyn's tissue was gripped more tightly. Kody averted his gaze. And Christine, she sat up straighter. Because at last the truth was no longer hearsay. It was proof. Do you get the sense that, crew, the silence in the room when figures land on the table? That is not currency, that is trust. Broken on the fly. For years, Robyn cultivated the image of the victim, the peacekeeper, the delicate flower keeping the family afloat. But what she was really holding was something else, an empire of finances Christine had no idea existed. And here is the kicker. The $12 million wasn't in one tidy account. No. Robyn's plan was far more sinister. She dispersed it. Secret investments, side businesses, and property titles in other names. Christine's lawyer pieced it together like a puzzle. Page by page, every new page opened up another level of trickery. The judge's eyes narrowed, brows raised, as if to say, is this family, or is this fraud? And crew, it is only the tip of the iceberg. Because when the $12 million secret finally broke, the courtroom didn't only question Robyn's integrity. They began questioning every transaction, every loan, every tale the Browns ever spun for TLC. But here is the actual bombshell. The explanation Robyn gave for where the money originated will surprise you more than the fortune itself. Bear with me, in part 2, I am going to walk you through Robyn's testimony. The time her lies began to fall apart, and how Christine asked the one question that silenced Robyn in front of the judge. The courtroom was thick with silence following the discovery of the $12 million account. Glares shifted from the lawyer's table to Christine, then to Robyn, who sat holding her tissue as if it were a protective shield. The judge pushed forward. "Mrs. Brown," he stated firmly, "the court requires an explanation. Where did this money originate from?" Robyn's lips quivered. She shifted in her seat, attempting to call forth her expertly rehearsed sobs. "Your Honor," she started quietly, "it was savings. Kody and me, we saved money. It was never intended to hurt anybody, just an emergency fund." The attorney seized. "A safety net that conveniently leaves out Christine, Janelle, and Mary. A safety net worth more than $12 million, buried in shell companies and LLCs with only your name on them. Mrs. Brown, this is not a safety net. This is an empire." Christine's face burned with rage and vindication. She'd been gaslighted for years, informed she was jealous, bitter, or making it up. And now here it was in print. Robyn hadn't merely been Kody's favorite wife. She'd been his financial accomplice staff. Can you sense it? This isn't a courtroom hearing, folks. This is decades of deception finally crashing into reality. Christine wasn't the bitter ex-wife they made her out to be. She was the whistleblower, the one who showed courage enough to stand up to the empire Robyn believed she could keep hidden. The attorney pushed further. "Mrs. Brown, documents indicate funds channeled straight from TLC contracts into accounts you only managed. Can you tell us why Christine's name, having been on the show for 12 seasons, is never found on any of these deposits?" Robyn stuttered, now clutching a damp tissue. Kody handled those deals. I just signed what he said." Christine's lawyer didn't bat an eye. "So you are telling us Mr. Brown told you to divert more than $12 million away from the women who created that show as brand?" Robyn went still. Kody fidgeted in his seat, his jaw clenching. The judge took a note, and the crew, witnessing this unfold, could sense the cracking of Robyn's perfect veneer. Christine leaned forward, steady voice, eyes fixed on Robyn. "Why didn't you tell me, Robyn? All of those nights we sat together, raising children, cooking dinner. You smiled in my face while making a fortune behind my back. Why?" Robyn's eyes flicked to the floor. She had no reply. The silence spoke more than words ever could. And here is where it gets sobering, crew. Robyn didn't just stash the money, she renamed it. Lawyers discovered that Robyn operated several companies with obfuscatory milk-like sounding names. Brown Media Holdings, Future Family LLC, and even Hope Investments. Each of them led back to her signature. Each of them filled with cash Christine never even knew was there. The lawyer waved the papers in the air. "These are not mere accounts, Your Honor. These are systematic attempts to conceal ownership. This is a firewall of finances created for the sole purpose of hiding Christine and the others in the dark." The judge shifted his glasses, looking down at Robyn. "Mrs. Brown, this court is not naive to manipulation. You will have to account fully, all pennies. Crew, let that register. Every cent for once." Robyn couldn't weep her way out. She couldn't cover behind Kody. The trail was too papered, the falsehoods too profound. But then came Christine's moment. The moment that will live on as the turning point. She posed one question, not as an attorney, but as a betrayed woman. She glared at Robyn, her voice cracking but firm. "If you always said we were family, why did you plan your future without us?" The courtroom was silent. Robyn's lips parted, but nothing issued from them. For the first time, her tears appeared to be less grief-stricken and more guilty. Crew, can you see it? The mask slipping. the years of manipulation finally staring back at her, because from that point on, the case wasn't so much about numbers. It was about character, morality, and trust broken beyond repair. And yet, wouldn't you know it, this wasn't the biggest bombshell, because once detectives began digging, they uncovered the appalling reality about the source of that $12 million empire. And crew, when you hear where the money came from, you'll see why Christine's testimony rocked the courtroom to its foundations. Stick with me, folks, because in part 3, I'll reveal to you how Robyn's wealth wasn't just concealed. It was constructed on the backs of the very people she purported to love. And the bombshell forced the judge to wonder whether the Browns' empire was ever truly legitimate at all. The probe lifted a veil nobody saw coming. As the auditors dug through the records, they found that the $12 million haul wasn't simply stashed away from television winnings. No, crew, it went far deeper. The money trail followed property deals, personal loans, and even merchandising agreements, all funneled through accounts. Robyn-controlled loan document shook the courtroom. A 3-year-old property deed revealed that land bought using TLC profits had been sold off discreetly. Not for the benefit of the entire family, but to Robyn herself. Christine's fists were balled. The memories were vivid. Nights' bills went unbilled. Nights children had to settle for less. Nights she was informed there was no cash to fund her aspirations of self-sufficiency. And yet here was evidence. There always had been money. It had just been concealed, redirected, and stashed away from her crew. Can you sense that betrayal? Picture struggling, making every last cent count, as the woman calling herself your sister. Wife secretly amasses an empire. This wasn't neglect. It was calculated robbery. The attorneys didn't let up there. They produced evidence of speaking fees, sponsorships, and brand partnerships that Robyn negotiated on her own, under the banner of her own name. Deals offered by producers to several wives, but channeled through Robyn because she insisted she was managing finances for the family. All checks into her vault, and that vault became the $12 million amount facing the courtroom. The judge's voice tightened. Mrs. Brown, these are not mistakes. These are intentional acts. The law considers concealment of assets fraud. Do you appreciate the gravity of this? Robyn wiped her eyes, nodding silently. But silence was louder than speech. Kody sat stiffly by her side, his eyes cast straight in front of him, his jaw working. This was his house of cards coming down, and he knew it. Christine's attorney leaned in for the clincher. So, while Christine was raising kids and keeping the family together, you were selling assets under her. While she was being informed, there wasn't enough money for college or medical bills. You were sitting on millions. Call that sisterhood. Mrs. Brown. The room hummed. Reporters were writing. Christine's heart beat fast. This was the moment she had prayed for. The moment the truth overwhelmed the lies. But then, crew, the worst discovery of all. The books revealed a string of loans borrowed against the collective name of the family. Hundreds of dollars loans. Loans that Christine had signed without knowing, by virtue of joint family filings. And to where did those loans go? Not into joint accounts. Not into family bills. They disappeared into Robyn's shell corporations, enriching her while the others and Christine took the risk. Christine audibly gasped. Her attorney rested a hand on her arm to hold her steady, but the anger in her eyes was not to be contained. You left me in debt while you built your wealth, she whispered, not to the court but to Robyn personally. The betrayal was now personal and crew, where it hurts. This wasn't about cash. This was about survival. Christine's sacrifices, the late nights, the compromise. After compromise, also the family could make it. But the very one who espoused loyalty and oneness was secretly establishing her own safety net. Her exit strategy, her kingdom. The judge then broke his silence at last. Mrs. Brown, these papers indicate a history of dishonesty. Now I must decide whether charges should be filed. The room fell silent. Robyn's face blanched. Kody fidgeted in his seat. For the first time, the walls they had constructed of charm and tears were showing cracks in an area no crying sob story could fix. Christine reclined, still watching Robyn for years. She had been made to feel small and insignificant, like she was invisible and replaceable. Now the tables had turned. Robyn was the one cornered and exposed, deprived of the story she held on to. Crew, consider this: $12 million stashed away. Millions diverted from funds destined for everyone. Loans taken out in Christine's name without her knowledge. And the worst of it, the person she trusted most, the person who smiled at her over dinner and vowed togetherness, was the mastermind behind it. But if you assumed this was the end, you are mistaken, because in the second round of testimony, Christine opened her story. Not the accountants, not the lawyers, but her own raw voice, and it was that testimony that shattered the Browns' carefully constructed image forever. Christine stood up slowly when her lawyer asked her to testify. For years she'd been talked over, disregarded, trivialized. But today, all eyes were on her, and she wasn't going to let her voice be silenced. Her fingers shook when she tuned the microphone, but her gaze, unyielding, piercing, fixed on Robyn. For over a quarter century, I've held on to the belief of family. She started. I believed in sharing, in sacrificing, in giving everyone else's needs precedence over my own. And what do I receive for that deceit? Broken promises, and debt to my name as someone else rested on millions. The courtroom waited in rapt attention. Christine's words were not witness testimony. They were years of pent-up anguish released. I recall begging for cash to pay medical expenses, she went on, her voice growing strained. I recall Kody telling us we didn't have anything. I sacrificed, I skipped things. I explained to my children we needed to make do. Meanwhile, she turned back to Robyn. You were hiding money, $12 million. Do you have any idea what it feels like to look your children in the eye and say we can't afford something, knowing later it was all a lie? Robyn's head dropped, her tissue pressed tightly against her mouth, but the tears no longer had the same effect. No one rushed to comfort her. No one bought the performance crew. Do you see the pivot? For years, the tears of Robyn had dictated the story, curving sympathy in her direction. But Christine's words struck deeper, truer, and the room was in the pull of her voice. Not Robyn's crying. Christine's attorney handed her a file. On the inside were copies of bank records, deeds to property, and contracts. Christine raised them, one at a time, holding them out before the judge. This is not speculation, this is evidence. Evidence that although I gave, she took. Evidence that all the sacrifices I made were founded upon lies. Evidence that the family we thought we had never did exist. The judge leaned forward, observing Christine's shaking hands grasping the papers. Mrs. Brown, he said softly, are you indicating that you were intentionally left out of money decisions? Christine laughed harshly. Excluded. Your Honor, I wasn't excluded. I was erased. I didn't even know decisions were being made until the fallout occurred in my lap. Debt collectors calling bank notices, and Robyn smiling like everything was fine. That is not exclusion. That is betrayal. Kody shifted, finally breaking his silence. Christine, you don't see. It wasn't that way. Robyn and I were protecting the family. Christine interrupted him harshly, her tone adamant. No, Kody, you weren't guarding the family. You were guarding Robyn. Always Robyn. Every buck, every transaction, every shred of your allegiance went to her, and the rest of us were supposed to beam over the crumbs. The gallery was abuzz with whispers. The judge rapped his gavel for silence, but the atmosphere within the room crackled with electricity. Crew, this wasn't testimony. This was vindication overdue. Christine's voice gentled. but it was no less forceful. I remained because I believed that it made a difference, that we were creating something together. But what I perceive today is that we were all creating her kingdom, a kingdom that we were never supposed to have together. Robyn only now raised her eyes, her mascara smudged, her lips quivering, but not a word emerged. The silence hung, oppressive, condemning. Christine's lawyer leaned forward. Your Honor, this is why we are calling for restitution. This is why Christine is entitled to her portion of what was stolen. $12 million wasn't merely stashed away. It was stolen. Stolen from the ones who constructed it. The judge nodded slowly, his expression unreadable but stern. The court will review all documentation and testimony. But let me be clear, fraud and concealment of this magnitude will not go unanswered. Crew, let that sink in. The years of Robyn's dominance were coming to a close in that very moment. Christine's voice had finally been heard, and while Robyn remained in silence, evidence mounting around her, Christine's courage saturated the room. But this is where it gets interesting. Just as Christine believed the worst had been exposed, detectives discovered another secret, one not just about money, but about loyalty, manipulation, and a betrayal so intimate that even Christine was left speechless. The last day of testimony was started with an unexpected revelation. The court received new papers overnight. Papers investigators claimed that exposed the actual basis of Robyn's $12 million empire. A murmur went through the room as the judge spoke. These documents, he said, reveal not only secret money, but also contracts, trust funds, and deals Robyn and Mr. Brown withheld from the other wives. The scope of this secrecy is unprecedented. Christine sat numb, her heart racing. She had thought she had already witnessed the worst, but as the lawyer opened the document, the treachery ran deeper. Crew, imagine this. Years of family sacrifice, of shared struggles, and behind the curtain, an entirely separate life being built. Because inside those files was proof that Robyn had created trust accounts, in her children's names only, accounts seeded with show money, real estate profits, and sponsorship deals. And guess what? Not a single dime went to Christine's kids, Janelle's kids, or Mary's. The lawyer raised the paper. Your Honor, these accounts add up to close to $4 million. Money reserved for Robyn's children alone. Christine's children were deliberately left out, denied even a portion of the riches their mother contributed to. The courtroom gasped. Christine's hand shot to her mouth. Her voice broke as she whispered, "You even excluded my kids?" Robyn's head fell, but this time she didn't reach for her tissue. The tears had vanished. The performance was over. Christine's voice cut through the silence. Her voice steady, but for the pain. I gave my life to this family. I brought your children up like they were mine. And you ensured mine were left with nothing. Crew, this wasn't monetary betrayal. This was generational. Robyn had promised her line's future and left Christine's children scrambling, informed there wasn't enough to share. The judge's voice boomed throughout the room. This is premeditated. This is exclusionary. This is familial fraud, dressed up as family management. The court cannot and will not turn a blind eye to this extent of manipulation. Kody, finally speaking, pounded his fist on the table. It wasn't meant to come out like this. His voice rang out, desperate, defensive, but in that instant, he confirmed it all. It wasn't meant to come out. It was meant to remain hidden forever. Christine slouched forward, her voice trembling but firm. You called it family, I called it love. But in reality, it was always a business. And I never was a partner, I was a pawn. The judge spoke the words that signed the moment. This court will proceed to seize assets, redistribute funds, and consider criminal charges. The Browns' empire, as it exists today, is no longer possible. Crew, can you envision this? Robyn slumped over in her chair, Kody angry and trapped. Christine standing at last in the light of truth. The empire constructed on secrecy, favoritism, and lies came crumbling down beneath the burden of proof and testimony. Christine emerged from the courtroom not only as an ex-wife, not only as a woman who lived through years of lies, but as the one who brought forward the greatest lie of all. And what about Robyn, her $12 million inheritance, once so expertly concealed, now became Exhibit A in the destruction of the Brown family fortune crew. Recall this: money will purchase comfort, lies will purchase time. But the truth is the only currency that never depreciates. And Christine, after all those years in hiding, finally collected.